The invitation was passed from hand to hand across the classroom with smiles, laughter, and excited whispers, until it reached the last row where I sat alone. Then, without warning, someone pulled it back before it ever touched my desk. A loud voice filled the room, followed by laughter that spread like wildfire. Everyone heard the words that shattered something inside me. I wasn't invited. I never had been. And just when I thought I had disappeared completely, one person quietly walked across the room, took my arm without asking anyone's permission, and changed my life forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal invisible wounds, forgiveness can break generations of pain, and hope can arrive when we least expect it, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us compassion still exists. For as long as anyone could remember, Callum Mercer had mastered the art of becoming invisible. He wasn't born quiet. His mother often told him that as a child he had laughed so loudly that neighbors could hear him from across the street. Everything changed after his father abandoned the family when Callum was 10. Bills piled up, his mother worked 2 jobs, and every move they made seemed to pull them farther away from stability. New schools became a routine. New classmates meant new opportunities to be judged. By the time he arrived at Briarwood High during his senior year, he had learned that speaking less usually meant hurting less. His clothes were always clean but worn. His backpack had been repaired so many times that different colored threads crossed each other like tiny rivers. He ate lunch alone because pretending to enjoy solitude felt easier than pretending rejection didn't hurt. Teachers appreciated his intelligence, but classmates barely noticed he existed unless they needed someone to laugh at. The biggest event of the semester was the graduation celebration organized entirely by the senior class. Everyone contributed a little money, everyone signed the invitation list, and everyone talked about what they would wear. Hallways buzzed with excitement from morning until the final bell. Callum never expected an invitation, yet somewhere deep inside, a small hopeful voice whispered that maybe this school would be different. That fragile hope disappeared in seconds. When the invitation list reached his desk, one of the boys snatched it away with an exaggerated grin while several others laughed. Someone loudly announced that mistakes happened and not everyone belonged at every celebration. Another joked that extra chairs cost money. The classroom erupted with laughter that echoed far longer than the words themselves. Callum lowered his eyes. He had practiced that movement for years because tears were harder to notice when people couldn't see his face. Even the teacher hesitated, uncertain whether stepping in would make the moment worse. Silence settled for only a heartbeat. Then a chair scraped against the floor. A young woman named Meredith Hale stood up. She wasn't the loudest student or the most popular, but people respected her because she never treated anyone differently based on status. She was captain of the debate team, volunteered at the community library, and somehow remembered every custodian's name. While others measured people by popularity, Meredith measured them by character. Without saying a word to the students who were still laughing, she crossed the classroom. She stopped beside Callum. She gently took his arm. With calm eyes and quiet confidence, she looked toward the room before softly saying the words no one expected. "Let's go home." The laughter stopped. Even those who had started the joke suddenly felt uncomfortable. Meredith wasn't creating a scene. She wasn't shouting. Somehow her calmness carried more weight than anger ever could. Callum looked confused. Home? He barely knew her. She explained that sometimes home wasn't a building. Sometimes home was wherever someone reminded you that you mattered. The teacher finally found the courage to dismiss the class early after seeing how shaken everyone had become. Outside, the afternoon sunlight filled the school courtyard with warmth. Students continued talking about the party while Meredith and Callum walked slowly through tree-lined streets. For several minutes neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt peaceful. Eventually Meredith admitted she had watched him all year. She noticed how he stayed after class to help teachers erase whiteboards without being asked. She noticed him returning lost wallets untouched. She noticed him picking up litter around campus when nobody else cared enough to bend down. She admitted that kindness performed without an audience always impressed her more than kindness performed for applause. Callum smiled for what felt like the first time in months. He confessed that nobody had ever described him that way before. They stopped at a small neighborhood bakery where Meredith bought 2 simple sandwiches. Callum immediately tried to refuse because he knew he couldn't pay her back, but she insisted that generosity wasn't a loan. As they sat on a nearby park bench surrounded by children laughing on the playground, Meredith shared something she had never told most classmates. Years earlier she had been the lonely new student too. She remembered eating lunch in bathroom stalls because sitting alone in the cafeteria felt unbearable. She remembered pretending to read books she wasn't actually reading simply to avoid looking around the room. One elderly teacher had noticed her loneliness and quietly invited her to help organize the school library every afternoon. That simple act had given her purpose until friendships slowly followed. Someone had once chosen her. Today she had simply returned the favor. Those words settled deep inside Callum's heart. For the first time in years he realized loneliness wasn't proof that he lacked value. Sometimes it simply meant nobody had taken the time to truly see him. The next morning something unexpected happened. Students who had laughed the previous day couldn't stop thinking about Meredith walking away from the classroom with Callum. Their joke no longer seemed funny after seeing someone respond with dignity instead of anger. One by one, small changes began. A classmate offered Callum a seat during lunch. Another apologized awkwardly in the hallway. A teacher nominated him for an academic award after realizing he consistently earned the highest grades without ever seeking recognition. None of these moments erased years of hurt. But healing rarely arrives all at once. It arrives quietly. One conversation. One apology. One unexpected kindness at a time. Weeks later, graduation rehearsal filled the school auditorium with excitement. Students lined up alphabetically, and Callum expected to stand unnoticed as always. Instead the principal paused before beginning. She spoke about character. She described courage not as the absence of fear but as choosing compassion when cruelty would have been easier. Without mentioning every detail, she acknowledged the classroom incident that had reached faculty members. She praised the student whose quiet integrity reminded the entire school what leadership actually looked like. Everyone knew she meant Meredith. The auditorium filled with applause. Meredith looked embarrassed rather than proud. She simply smiled toward Callum. After rehearsal ended, something even more surprising happened. Several students who had organized the graduation celebration admitted they had intentionally excluded him because they assumed nobody would care. They apologized sincerely and invited him again. Callum thanked them. Then he politely declined. Not because he wanted revenge. Not because forgiveness was impossible. But because he had already discovered something more valuable than attending a party where acceptance depended on public opinion. He had found genuine friendship. That afternoon Meredith invited him to volunteer at the community library where she spent weekends reading stories to children. Callum agreed. He expected to stack books. Instead he discovered smiling children who asked endless questions, elderly volunteers who welcomed everyone warmly, and neighbors who appreciated every helping hand. For the first time in years he felt needed. Months passed. Graduation arrived beneath bright blue skies and warm sunshine. Families filled rows of folding chairs while teachers proudly watched another class prepare for adulthood. Callum's mother sat near the front wearing her nicest dress despite obvious signs of exhaustion from years of hard work. Tears filled her eyes as she watched her son walk across the stage. When his name was announced, applause echoed across the field. To his surprise, the loudest applause came from classmates who had once ignored him. People can change. Sometimes shame becomes the beginning of wisdom. After the ceremony ended, photographs covered every corner of the campus. Families hugged, friends laughed, and future plans filled every conversation. Callum found Meredith standing beneath a large maple tree. Neither needed many words. Some friendships are built through endless conversations. Others begin with a single act of courage. Meredith handed him a small wrapped package. Inside was a simple leather notebook. On the first page she had written a short message. Never let someone else's opinion become your address. Home is every place your heart is welcomed. Callum closed the notebook slowly. Years later, after finishing university through scholarships earned by relentless determination, he became a guidance counselor at another high school. Whenever he noticed students sitting alone, he remembered the afternoon someone had crossed an entire classroom simply to remind him he belonged. He made it his mission that no student would disappear unnoticed if he could help it. Sometimes he invited lonely students to help organize school events. Sometimes he simply listened. Sometimes he introduced classmates who shared similar interests. Every small act traced back to one unforgettable afternoon when someone reached for his arm instead of turning away. Meredith eventually became a children's librarian, filling shelves with stories that taught courage, empathy, and hope. Every year she invited Callum to read during the community's summer literacy program. Children loved hearing them tell stories together because they laughed easily and encouraged every shy child to ask questions without fear. Neither became famous. Neither became wealthy. But together they quietly transformed hundreds of lives. Not through grand speeches. Not through extraordinary power. Only through ordinary kindness practiced consistently. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment when one person's kindness changed your life forever, or have you been that person for someone else? Leave a meaningful comment below and let others in our community know what lesson this story reminded you of. As the years passed, Callum often returned to that memory of the classroom. He no longer remembered the laughter with pain. Instead, he remembered the footsteps. The calm walk across the room. The gentle hand reaching toward him. The quiet reminder that dignity speaks louder than cruelty ever can. He realized that while rejection had introduced one of the hardest days of his life, compassion had transformed it into the beginning of everything beautiful that followed. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give another person isn't money, popularity, or success. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let them face their hardest moment alone. One act of courage can become someone else's turning point, and one moment of kindness can echo through generations in ways we'll never fully understand. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all become the kind of person who notices the one standing alone, reaches out without hesitation, and reminds them that everyone deserves a place to belong.